There is a quiet strength and stillness that many will never understand because it doesn't make noise. It doesn't chase attention or try to be noticed. Yet, everyone can feel it. We live in a world that praises loudness, quick answers, and constant motion. But real intelligence, especially in a woman, often speaks softly. Not out of fear, but because it is calm, rooted, complete. A truly intelligent woman isn't always the one with the highest degree or the strongest opinions. She's the one who can walk away from chaos without needing to win. She's the one who doesn't mistake attention for respect. She's the one who knows. The way I treat myself sets the tone for every connection I have. So this isn't a talk about impressing others or chasing perfection. It's about awareness. Because the moment a woman becomes aware of how she moves, thinks, and reacts, she awakens a quiet power that changes every room she walks into. Let's step into that awareness together. If you're new here, welcome to Self-Mastery, a space where we share timeless wisdom to help you protect your energy, lift your mind, and walk with purpose. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a message that speaks to your soul, strengthens your spirit, and maybe even changes your path. Let's begin. There's a difference between being silent and being still. Many people stay quiet outside, but inside their minds are like busy markets, full of noise, bargaining for approval, afraid of judgment, hungry for applause. But a truly intelligent woman learns what few people do. That inner silence isn't about removing sound, it's about ending inner conflict. She doesn't avoid others to protect her peace. She simply doesn't let everything demand her attention. Her mind becomes sacred ground, not open to every conversation, not exposed to every emotional storm. And this doesn't come from arrogance. It grows from clarity, the kind that forms after many lessons that taught her what happens when you trade your peace to solve other people's chaos. She has learned, often through pain, that arguing to prove her worth, explaining her boundaries, or reacting to every emotion around her doesn't bring peace. It only drains her. In neuroscience, there's a term called cognitive load. The amount of information your brain is handling at any moment. Too much stimulation, whether from arguments, drama, or overthinking, floods the body with stress hormones like cortisol. Over time, this weakens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for wisdom, calm, and empathy. But when a woman guards her inner silence, she protects that sacred space. She gives her mind time to recover. And that act alone becomes the foundation of true emotional intelligence. Picture a woman who reacts to everything. Her partner says something harsh, she snaps. Her boss ignores her, she burns inside. Her friend forgets to call, she feels rejected. Her emotions become a storm that never ends. But now imagine another woman. Her partner raises his voice. She pauses, breathes. In that stillness, she doesn't just hear his words, she feels his pain. She doesn't mirror his chaos, she stands in her calm. From that calm, she chooses her response with wisdom. This is the power of inner silence. It's not weakness. It's mastery, and it quietly changes how others treat her. There's an old Eastern saying, "The wise one drinks water, but hears the ripple." It means she not only lives, but listens deeply to life. She feels energy. She notices when a smile hides sadness. She senses what remains unsaid. Because her mind is clear, she sees truth. A woman like this becomes mysterious to others. Not because she hides, but because she is unpredictable in a world ruled by reaction. She doesn't fight every battle or join every drama. Her calm becomes magnetic. People feel something grounded in her, a steady knowing. And this silence isn't just spiritual, it's practical. In love, it's the line between conflict that breaks and conflict that heals. There's a story of an old woman known for settling arguments. When couples came to her, she would sit in silence for minutes before speaking. When asked why, she said, I wait for the truth to rise. Not anger, not fear, truth. She didn't speak from pain. She waited until her wisdom returned. Science agrees. Studies show that after just 90 seconds of silence, the brain's emotional center calms, letting reason return. So when you pause before reacting, you greatly increase your chance of saying something wise instead of something you regret. Wise women know this. They practice silence not just in meditation, but in the middle of storms. When insulted, they don't rush to defend. When misunderstood, they don't panic to explain. When ignored, they don't shrink. They stay still inside. From that stillness, their next step becomes clear. This doesn't mean they are cold or numb. In fact, they feel everything, but they are not controlled by anything. Then comes another secret, knowing when to be soft and when to be still. Softness is often mistaken for weakness and strength for harshness. But the wise woman has outgrown these illusions. She's been too soft and got hurt. She's been too hard and pushed love away. Now she carries both softness and strength in balance. Emotional discipline is her quiet art. Not for others, but because she respects her own energy. She knows anger may feel powerful, but it drains her. She knows that always forgiving too soon or staying silent to avoid conflict costs her dignity. So she learns a new rhythm. When a man crosses her boundary, she doesn't yell. She simply stops granting him access to her presence. When a friend only calls in need, she doesn't scold. She just stops being always available. When life overwhelms her, she slows down, listens, and adjusts. This is steel, calm, firm, unshakable. Yet within that steel is softness. The softness to forgive without being foolish, to cry without collapsing, to love deeply without losing herself. Psychologists call this emotional flexibility, the ability to shift through emotions without being trapped by them. It's not the absence of feeling, but the presence of choice. This creates real trust. Men, for instance, feel safe around a woman who feels deeply but doesn't drown in emotion. A woman who can express her needs clearly, not through blame. A woman who holds her grace even when life doesn't go her way. That's not performance, it's maturity. And it draws real connection. There's a story of a woman whose husband grew distant. She tried everything, talking, crying, even silence, but nothing changed. One night she said calmly, "I love you, but I will not carry this alone. I'm here if you want to rebuild, but I won't beg for your presence." For the first time, he truly heard her. Not because she shouted, but because her words were rooted in truth. Her calm had power. That's the kind of woman people respect. Even when they disagree, they feel her sincerity. Her love is peaceful, not desperate. Her emotions are steady. She brings calm, and people either rise to meet her or fade away on their own. Neurologically, this emotional balance strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the seat of resilience and wisdom. When a woman regulates her emotions, she builds safety within herself, which strengthens every relationship around her. This is the loop of self-mastery. And it begins with one small act. Pausing, breathing, asking, is this reaction aligned with the woman I'm becoming? She chooses her words, her tone, her timing. And when she stumbles, as all do, she doesn't blame herself. She reflects, learns, grows. That is true intelligence in motion. A woman who knows when to be soft and when to be still cannot be manipulated. She isn't guilted into overgiving or provoked into regret. She moves with awareness, and that awareness becomes her power. She doesn't dominate or submit. She lives in balance. And that harmony between silence and strength, softness and discernment, becomes the essence of her love, her leadership, her legacy. There's another quiet skill many overlook: observation. In a world that rewards those who speak the loudest, she has learned to notice. She listens deeper than most. Her power is not in her voice, but in her awareness. She watches before she acts, not because she fears, but because she understands. A wise woman observes more than she speaks, not because she lacks words, but because she knows most people listen only to reply, not to understand, and she refuses to waste her energy in shallow exchange. There's a story of a woman starting a new job. Others rush to prove themselves. She waited, watched, and listened. She noticed who took credit, who took blame, who stayed quiet. By the end of the month, she understood not just titles, but hearts, motives, and trust. When she finally spoke, people listened, not because she was louder, but because her words came from presence. True observation is empathy in motion. Neuroscience shows that deep observation activates the mirror neurons, the part of the brain that allows us to feel and understand others without words. When a woman listens not just to words, but to tone, posture, and energy, she sharpens her intuition. And in that space of awareness, she becomes what the world rarely sees. A woman at peace with herself, moving not from fear, but from quiet knowing. This intuition, or what some might call a woman's sixth sense, is not mystical at all. It is simply awareness mixed with emotional understanding. Many women, when they look back, realize they noticed the warning signs, but brushed them aside. The man who couldn't meet their eyes when he apologized. The friend whose compliments carried quiet competition. The coworker who was kind in public but cold in private. The signs were there, hidden beneath distraction, business, and the wish to see the best in others. But a truly intelligent woman does not rush to conclusions, nor to defend her beliefs. She pauses. She reflects. She watches. She notices how people behave when they're angry, when they're joyful, when they feel strong, and when they feel afraid. She listens with her whole being because she knows that people reveal themselves not only through words, but through tone, silence, and timing. In love and friendship, this habit becomes both a protection and a doorway to deeper closeness. A woman who observes is not easily fooled by charm. She sees through the image. She notices the gap between what someone says and what they actually do. She observes how a man treats those who serve him, how he speaks of his past, how he reacts to rejection or correction. From such small gestures, she sees his true nature. Yet her observation also becomes a quiet act of love. She notices when her partner is silent, not from distance, but from the weight he carries. She senses when something feels off, not because he speaks, but because his energy changes. And in that awareness, she meets him where he is. She doesn't guess, she perceives. A wise woman once said, "I don't ask many questions. I just watch the answers unfold." This calm awareness gives her a magnetic presence. She listens in a way that makes others feel deeply seen. She notices the smallest things. The shift in someone's tone when they talk about their dream, the way their shoulders relax when they finally feel safe, the light in their eyes when they remember childhood. Because she sees people, they open their hearts to her. Her observation, however, is not passive. She turns it inward. She notices her own tone when she's tired, her own thoughts when she's insecure. She becomes a student of her own mind. And here, observation turns into transformation. When she can watch herself without harshness, she changes gracefully. She sees the old patterns, people-pleasing, over-explaining, withdrawing. And because she sees them clearly, they lose power over her. This kind of self-awareness brings freedom. It is the difference between saying, "That's just who I am," and saying, "That's who I used to be." From this grounded awareness grows another quiet power. Creation. A wise woman does not only consume the world's noise. She builds her own rhythm within it. She creates space for her mind, time for her well-being, beauty in her surroundings, peace in her connections, and order in her days. Creation is not always public. It doesn't need an audience. It lives in the way she writes in her journal, the way she cooks with care, or shapes her morning with intention. In each act, she reminds herself, "I am the author of my life, not a character waiting for permission." There's a great difference between movement and motion. Motion is busy, frantic, habitual. Movement is guided, clear, alive. The woman who constantly scrolls, reacts, and rushes is in motion. The woman who pauses to create, to write, to build, to reflect, she is in movement. This shift from consuming to creating changes her relationships too. When she only consumes, advice, approval, opinions, she drifts from her own wisdom. She starts to look outward for what she already carries within. But when she creates, she reclaims her center. Her journal becomes her guide, her routines become her refuge, her silence becomes her mentor. In love, this protects her from emotional dependence. She doesn't rely on her partner to define her peace or purpose. She brings wholeness with her. She creates joy instead of waiting for it. She offers care instead of demanding it. Her love becomes generous, not desperate. There's a story of a woman who lost herself after a breakup. Her identity had been woven into the relationship. After it ended, she drowned in books, courses, therapy, seeking to fix the emptiness. But healing began when she picked up her old paintbrush. As she painted, her grief softened. It didn't vanish, it transformed. Her art gave her voice again, a mirror back to herself, later she said. It wasn't painting that healed me. It was remembering that I still had something beautiful to give. That is the wisdom of creation. It's not about masterpieces, it's about presence. And in that presence, a woman remembers herself. Even science agrees creativity activates the parts of the brain that foster reflection, healing, and insight. When she creates, she isn't escaping life, she is embracing it. Creation changes her relationship with time. Life no longer happens to her, she becomes a participant in it. She chooses how she wakes, how she rests, how she reconnects. She doesn't just consume food, she nourishes herself. She doesn't just consume media, she chooses peace over noise. She doesn't just consume relationships, she contributes to them. And slowly, her presence begins to glow. You can feel when a woman lives with intention. Her energy is calm, deep, magnetic. She doesn't chase. She doesn't compete. She simply is. And that being is far more powerful than performance. Yet creation asks for discipline. It's easier to scroll than to write, easier to react than to build, easier to numb than to reflect. So she does not wait for inspiration. She builds rhythm, a few minutes each morning, a walk at dusk, one day a week away from noise. In that simple commitment, she keeps finding herself again and again, not in chaos, but in quiet choice. Observation teaches her what is. Creation reminds her what can be. Together, they shape a life of purpose instead of performance. There is a quiet elegance in a woman who no longer explains her boundaries. She does not enforce them with anger, nor beg for them to be seen. Her boundary is not a wall, but a rhythm. Those who can move with it remain, those who cannot fade gently away. She knows boundaries are not about pushing people out, but about keeping her own energy true. She has learned the hard way that giving too much to those who give too little leads only to emptiness. So her limits become sacred, not through harshness, but through steadiness. When someone disrespects her time, she doesn't argue, she simply steps back. When someone crosses her line, she doesn't plead for understanding, she walks away, calm and final. And in that silence, she speaks clearly, I choose myself. The world often misunderstands women like this. They are called cold or proud. But behind that quiet lies deep wisdom. They have wept, bent, explained, endured. From that fire, they emerged not hardened but clear, and clarity never shouts. Psychology calls it enmeshment, when boundaries blur and the self dissolves into another. Many wise women have lived this. They have loved so much they lost themselves. And when love was not returned with respect, they found only emptiness. But instead of turning bitter, they became better. Not louder, but clearer. Their boundaries stopped being reactions and became reflections of self-respect. Think of the woman who always said yes. to helping, to staying late, to forgiving too soon. She thought love meant sacrifice. She believed being available meant being worthy. Until one day, she broke quietly. In her exhaustion, she realized no one would hand her the life she deserved. She had to claim it, and claiming it began with no. She started small, turning off her phone at night, saying no to what didn't feel right, resting when tired, ignoring false flattery. Slowly, her world rearranged. Some left. Others stepped closer. The ones who stayed learned to honor her peace. A woman who doesn't justify her limits isn't cruel. She's centered. She knows that the right man will not need her to shrink or explain endlessly. He will understand her silence, move with her rhythm, and protect her peace. This clarity filters her relationships. Those who test limits through guilt or manipulation find no hold. She doesn't tug or wrestle, she releases, even when it hurts, for she knows no love is worth losing herself. Your boundary is not up for debate, the saying goes. If someone dislikes it, they are free to go. The wise woman lives this, not as defiance, but as truth. Her presence is her answer. Her absence is her answer. Her peace is her answer. But her boundaries are not only for others, they're also for herself. She guards her mind from spiraling into old pain. She notices when her thoughts revisit the past, whispering of not being enough. And softly she says, "Not today, I don't live there anymore." This is self-leadership. She no longer follows every fear or emotion. Her energy is precious, and she spends it only on what aligns with her truth. One woman once said she used to excuse people endlessly. He didn't mean it. She's just stressed. They're doing their best. But she realized that tolerating inconsistency erased her own integrity. By excusing bad behavior, she was teaching others how to treat her. So she changed. Now, when words don't match actions, she steps back, not with anger, but with clarity. Because she knows love without respect isn't love at all. And attention without consistency isn't commitment. In relationships, such a woman is both mystery and home. Mystery because she cannot be controlled. Home because her steadiness brings peace. The right man feels safe in her standards. He knows her love runs deep. But it also holds him accountable. She will not chase. She will not convince. She will not trade her truth for affection. This is not power over others. It is power within herself. She knows who she is, what she values, and what she will never allow disguised as love. Eastern philosophy reminds us that a woman in harmony with herself becomes like water, soft yet capable of shaping mountains. She does not fight against life. She moves with it. And part of that movement is knowing when to say no, when to step back, when to protect the space where her soul can grow. That protection is often invisible. Sometimes it means turning off the news. Sometimes it means staying out of family chaos. Sometimes it means not giving an emotional reply when someone is clearly trying to provoke her. And sometimes it is simply choosing silence instead of arguing with someone who has already decided not to understand her. There is deep peace in not needing to explain everything, in trusting that what is meant for you will stay, and what isn't will fall away on its own. Boundaries are not built overnight. They are shaped slowly, through years of living, through heartbreak, through the quiet decision to never abandon oneself again. A woman who has walked through betrayal, confusion, and disappointment eventually comes to this sacred understanding: I know how it feels to be treated poorly. I will not allow it again. Not from others, and not from myself. Her life becomes simpler, not because all conflict disappears, but because confusion fades. Her yes carries full presence. Her no carries full peace. And she no longer feels the need to justify either. A woman who lives in this way changes the energy around her. People become more mindful in her presence, more respectful, not out of fear, but out of admiration. They sense that she is not someone you can half love, not someone you can feed crumbs to, not someone you can guilt, gaslight, or wear down. She has come home to herself, and in doing so, she teaches others how to treat her, not by lectures, but by example. When someone asks why she doesn't tolerate certain behavior, she doesn't explain or defend. She simply smiles and walks away because her boundary is not a speech. It is a reflection of her self-worth, and it does not require permission. There is something quietly powerful about a woman who treats herself with dignity, not only in her words, but in her daily routines. Not in the grand gestures that draw applause, but in the small, repeated acts she does when no one is watching. These humble rituals, often overlooked, are the structure of her self-respect. They are proof of how she values herself, not in theory, but in practice. A truly aware woman understands that confidence is not luck. It is the outcome of how she speaks to herself, how she nourishes herself, how she rests, moves, dresses, listens, walks, and always returns to her own center. These small things may appear ordinary, but they form her foundation. They shape her choices, her relationships, her peace. It begins the moment she wakes. A woman in alignment doesn't grab her phone as soon as her eyes open. She reaches for stillness, for breath, for intention. She knows that her first thoughts will set the tone of her day. So she builds a morning rhythm that reminds her who she is before the world tries to tell her. Maybe it's a few deep breaths, a warm drink, a journal entry, or a quiet moment by the window. Not because she must, but because she values herself enough to begin her day with awareness. There was once a woman always tired, not just from work, but from the endless demands of others, children, colleagues, a partner who gave less than he took. She began losing herself. Her mood grew reactive, her body tense. One day, someone offered a small suggestion. Spend 10 minutes each morning doing something only for herself. At first, she resisted, thinking it wouldn't help. But she tried, just 10 minutes sitting quietly with a notebook. No interruptions, no phone, no noise. After 3 weeks, everything changed. Not because life got easier, but because she became steadier. She was calmer, made clearer choices, spoke from peace instead of tension. That small daily act became her refuge. What this reveals is simple self-respect builds slowly. It's not made in one bold act, but through small daily choices that remind you of your worth, especially when others cannot see it. A woman who practices this no longer chases validation in empty places. She doesn't need a man's praise to feel beautiful because she has already tended to her body with care. She doesn't crave constant applause because she already keeps her promises to herself, even the smallest ones. Drinking water, finishing a walk, writing one true sentence. These small wins accumulate into quiet strength. And that strength shows in her relationships. A woman who respects herself becomes more selective, not from pride, but from clarity. She doesn't entertain shallow talk. She doesn't allow inconsistent people to drain her. She doesn't stay where she must keep explaining why she deserves love. She isn't unkind. She's simply aware that she doesn't need to trade her peace to be accepted. The love she welcomes must match the love she already gives herself. Psychology says rituals create safety in the brain. The nervous system thrives on rhythm and predictability. When a woman builds consistent rituals, morning walks, journaling, mindful cooking, she sends her body a message: you are safe. You are cared for. That sense of inner safety reflects in how she faces outer challenges. Imagine a woman in an unstable relationship. One day he's warm, the next distant. Her heart confused, she begins to question her worth. But because she has anchored herself in ritual, she does not collapse. She feels pain, yes, but she knows how to return to herself. Her nervous system recognizes home, not in another person, but in her own breath. This is not theory, it is practice. A woman who nourishes herself daily builds emotional muscle. Her rituals whisper, no matter what happens, I still have me. And that keeps her steady when life shakes. There was another woman who made it a habit to light a candle before bed. It seemed small, but to her it meant something sacred, that even after chaos, she could return to light. That flame became a prayer, a quiet promise. On nights of heartbreak, she lit it. On nights of joy, she lit it. On nights of emptiness, she lit it still. That simple act healed her, reminding her that even when the world feels unstable, she could still show up for herself. This is the essence of ritual. It doesn't fix you. It reminds you of your dignity, your beauty, your strength, your sacredness. In love, this changes everything. A woman grounded in ritual doesn't chase highs or drama. Her world within is already rich. She brings calm, not chaos. She listens more deeply, speaks more clearly, responds more wisely, because she's not driven by need. She's full, and people can feel that. She becomes magnetic not because of her words, but because of her peace. A man might not know why he feels safe with her. He just does. Her energy is not scattered. Her attention is not desperate. Her presence is whole, and from that wholeness comes quiet power. It also gives her strength to walk away when needed, not with anger, but with reverence for herself. She doesn't slam doors, she closes them gently without needing to be understood. Because solitude, to her, is not punishment. It is a return. She knows how to be alone without being lonely, for she has become her own companion. One of the most powerful acts a woman can do is to treat herself the way she wants others to treat her. To speak kindly to herself, to feed herself with love, to dress with grace, to rest without guilt, to move with respect. When she does this, the world slowly begins to mirror it. There is an old saying, you teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. It is not an idea, it is a pattern. When a woman constantly ignores her own needs to please others, they begin to believe her needs don't matter. Not because they're cruel, but because she taught them so. But when she honors her own time, space, and energy, people learn, this is a woman who must be met with presence, or not at all. Rituals, then, are more than habits. They are spiritual practice. Each one says, I am worthy, I am whole, I am responsible for my energy. And this responsibility is freedom, because once a woman claims it, she stops waiting for others to fill her cup. She fills it herself daily, lovingly. Eastern wisdom says the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. How you fold your clothes, how you pour your tea, how you walk, all reflect your inner state. A woman rushing through her day may not notice how that rush leaks into her relationships. But a woman who ties her hair with care, who sets her home with intention, who eats with presence, she carries that same mindfulness into everything she touches. Presence is the fruit of ritual, and presence is the highest form of love. Imagine being with someone who is fully present, who listens, who remembers, who notices. That kind of presence is rare, and it begins within. For a woman cannot offer presence to another if she is absent from herself. So these small daily rituals, though simple, are sacred. They are the roots of her inner garden. If she forgets them, her spirit becomes fragile. If she nurtures them, her energy becomes strength, not only for her, but for everyone around her. There's no single perfect ritual. Some women dance in the morning, others sit in stillness. Some write unsent letters, others walk barefoot on the earth. Some pray, some stretch, some sing. What matters is not what she does, but that she does it. For herself, not for show, but to return. Return to center. Return to peace. Return to truth. And as she does, again and again, her life changes. Not because others change, but because she does. She becomes a woman who knows what she needs, who gives from fullness, not emptiness, who walks into rooms already whole. And that wholeness cannot be faked. It must be lived, one ritual at a time. When a woman begins to live like this, when her habits grow from self-respect, her silence becomes sacred, her emotions calm, her thoughts clear, her life creative, her boundaries firm, her rituals steady. She no longer searches for her worth. She wears it. She no longer asks, "Am I enough?" She feels enough in how she rises each morning. She no longer wonders, "Will they stay?" For she no longer clings to those who must be convinced. She becomes a woman whose very presence speaks before her words. Not because she is loud, but because she is aligned, and in that alignment her world reshapes, her standards rise.